Welcome to the Eugene Regional Accelerator Fireside Chat. There, I got it.
Boom.
I'm here with Joey. Joey, why don't you tell everybody just a quick summary of who you are and what you do before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Wonderful. Quick summary about who I am and what I do. Before you hear about who I am and what I do, I just want to give a shout out to my team that supports me. We're SOAR Foods. This goes up to the SOAR fam, everyone in manufacturing, everyone in marketing, all of our supporters, all the financial stakeholders, all of our farmers. Thank you for believing in what we do. It's really fun. My name is Joey Jaraczewski. I run a company called SOAR Foods. We're a consolidated food and beverage manufacturing and marketing firm. We're located in Cottage Grove. We make grab-and-go fresh food. We're distributing into 45 stores. And we're working on hazelnut milk because that's what people want. And before all that, SOAR is a statement of values, solidarity, originality, honesty, respect. And I have to give respect to this man, Micah Elkonen, for always being there for us, fitting us into his busy schedule while he's trying to grow the big food macroeconomy of Eugene. He's also trying to help SOAR. So thank you, Micah, for always believing.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So we met a couple of years ago while you were in the MBA program at Lundquist. And we'll get back to that. But I kind of realized I don't know a whole lot about your story up until that point. So could you give us kind of the quick, personal history of Joey J and, how you think, that's gotten you to where you are now?
Yeah. Micah met me as a rock climbing graduate student at the U of O MBA. Before I was a rock climbing graduate student, I was a punk rocker, actually. And I got my degree in education. I wanted to be a high school English teacher, really believe in the power of the written word, really believe in the power of language to unite the community. And then that led me into being a punk rocker, playing shows across the country, and being in punk rock, being involved in education, incidentally got me involved in the food system. After I got out of college, I really, really wanted to learn how to run a restaurant and wanted to make something that was a hip local spot. Later on learned that all of my inclinations looked a lot like sustainable, local, and organic food. And so when I sort of shed my punk rock persona, when I got that out of my system, I said, well, what do I want to do? I want to work on food, apparently. Read The One Straw Revolution by a Japanese thinker named Fukuoka, and that got me thinking that there's a whole industry out there devoted to making a better food system. And so that got me to the U of O to study sustainable business, and I specialized in food. And that's how I got to know you.
And was there any particular thing that drew you to Lundquist?
Yeah, it was actually the business for positive change, all of the advertising materials. How do you actually act on making a better for you business or a better for the world business? But beyond all that, it was literally the Willamette Valley attracted me here. I could have gone to Notre Dame. I could have gone to University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. Strong agricultural programs, strong food system or humanities programs. But the actual Willamette Valley, the idea that we can grow over 250 crops naturally here with minimal impact on the land, awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of my story too. I was an MBA, you know that, and it's interesting. I think a lot of people even in Eugene don't realize that Lundquist has a nationally recognized sustainable business program, and kind of the sheer volume of students, especially at the graduate level, I'd say, that come through with an interest in food or agriculture. It's a nice little community of folks, and college has done a pretty good job of cultivating that. So yeah, it's always fun to for me, I got involved in, I finished the MBA in 2012, and every year seeing a new folks that come through that are either launching food companies or getting involved with food companies. There's I could probably name people year to year that are kind of like the all-stars in food that have come through. When you finished the program, you had already sort of gotten SOAR off the ground.
Yeah.
Do you think whether it was during the program or sort of after the program, how did you get yourself involved in the greater ecosystem, kind of outside the walls of the university?
Yeah, I got involved with Rain Eugene. In fact, it was just by interest. I remember sitting down with Joe Marushak and saying, how did I come to be here? And he said it was simply through your energy and your interest in entrepreneurship. If I can back it up to my personal history, I come from an entrepreneurial family. My dad ran a multi-million-dollar real estate development company. It crashed, you know, that as real estate tends to do. And I grew up starting businesses with my family. And when you talk about food, and when you talk about the food and beverage program at the U of O MBA, I think it's really interesting that the intentional emphasis on creating food businesses or food startups has not been there. It hasn't been there, but now it's a sector strategy for Lane County. Now it's an emphasis for the U of O. Now it's an emphasis for Lane County, LCC. And so you see all this activity because people can start food businesses. I got started at the U of O, and by the time I graduated, I had a food business under my belt and was ready to go. But the intention has not been there till now. The energy hasn't been there till now.
I've always felt like, and you know, my opinion is a little biased because my work has been to help get food businesses off the ground here. But it's always felt like to me that this region is especially friendly to new food companies, not just at a consumer level, but in terms of the resources that exist and the business community. Like, am I living in reality feeling that way?
When you talk about how did you get your start, I just threw myself in and started talking to people, asking for introductions. I got started from day one of coming to the MBA, the Oregon MBA, with just simple networking. I got out of my last restaurant job, Sustainable Local Organic Concepts of Flagstaff, Arizona, and sought introductions to a food distributor in Phoenix, introductions to a food distributor in Wisconsin, went out to Alabama and did some woofing at a Hare Krishna farm, went up to Illinois and saw acres upon acres of GMO corn growing and was like, and then went and talked to like the only local guy doing U-Pick, and he was like, my life is sad and no one supports me. They're like, exactly, because the entire industry around you is supporting bioengineered agriculture. Went from there to growing power in Milwaukee and saw 120, 200 acres of intensive traditional farming in the middle of the city in the worst zip codes, and saw the intersection between food justice and social justice, and then came to Oregon and I still thought I was going to start a restaurant. I talked to Stephanie Kimmel at Marché. I talked with Tom Douglas of Douglas Restaurants up in Seattle. I talked with Maurice from, what is that, the fine dining place right down the street from U of O.
Oh, at, I'm getting in trouble.
Like
now.
Enchanted or something like that.
Oh,
Either way,
different spots.
All these pioneers of farm-to-table restaurants. And from there, was just pushed by Sally Bell of the U of O to think bigger. You can always start a restaurant. A restaurant acts strictly locally. Even your supply chain is strictly local.
Right.
The furthest I ever got up in food service was just talking to Bon Appetit, Stephanie at Bon Appetit.
And you're talking about the institutional food service company,
yes.
not the magazine.
Yes, the institutional food service company, Bon Appetit, out of Palo Alto, out of San Jose. And it was at that point that I said, well, how do you expand that scope? And it looked like food and beverage. And then
like products.
Products.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to my second year, had finished networking in food service, had finished networking in agribusiness, did a lot of networking with Cargill, with ADM, with CHS, these companies that move tonnage of resources, and said, well, the way you actually drive change is by being the brand.
Right. So you came up with an original brand concept, which was sort of, I'll call it SOAR 1.0. And I'm curious, if you want to talk about that and kind of talk about the evolution of that to sort of where you've gotten now, I think that might be an interesting story. But what's most interesting to me is the process you went through to over the last 2 years to get to from SOAR 1.0 to Hazel People.
Yes.
Maybe describing, the short version of that journey, but then I'm also curious about your experience getting feedback from people driving some of that change, because I know that you're just about everyone in the community who does work with entrepreneurs knows you and knows SOAR, because you've done a really good job of connecting with folks. And my guess is you've gotten a lot of opinions along the way as well, which I know for a lot of entrepreneurs is kind of like the best and the worst thing at the same time. So yeah, maybe wrap on that whole genre for a second.
For sure. If I take it back to the beginning with SOAR, I think of the first presentation, which was just blank. It was Project Food and Beverage Company, and we'll fit in a name afterwards. The concept was launched on the hypothesis that you could combat chronic illness, you could combat climate change, you could help build food systems, all through Food and Beverage Company. And then we ended up calling it SOAR because it was a statement of values. Eventually called that a brand name, SOAR Protein, and then eventually it became a master concept, SOAR Foods, that we can launch products through. But when you talk about all of the willing people that are willing to share their opinion and talk to you about your idea, because it's so much easier to talk about an idea and poke the holes in it than actually go to work on it.
Totally. You
know, I think about it last night. Last night I was networking with a new entrepreneur that wants to start a protein beverage brand.
Oh.
He said, "You've done it before, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, this is actually what I think. I think that you need to act at such a higher level. You need to have access to much more capital than you have presently, because the food industry is one where you can simply buy your way in." But everyone who's been able to help me, and I can rattle off Justin Honey from Snowtemp, I can talk about Justin Freeman, formerly Hummingbird Wholesale, now Bagelsphere, Micah Elkan and Dan Vishney, Lori Spencer from Oregon Chai, all these wonderful people who donated their time to say, this is how I found success, this is how other people found success, and listen to this advice. Didn't listen to any of it. Didn't listen to any of it.
Right.
Yeah. We got started. We made the most asinine product, and because we started in the kitchen. We started with the culinary heritage. What we're going to do, we're going to make a sustainable local organic protein shake. It's going to come from the fruit of the land. The protein is not going to come from an engineered ingredient. The protein is going to come from sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, and hemp. We're going to make it by hand. Bad idea. Don't make it by hand, because there's a whole industry out there that's going to make you food products that you can scale.
Right. So making it by hand means too expensive, quality control not where you want it, yada, yada, yada.
But making it by hand allows us to build the company that we want to build.
Right.
The company that we want to build focuses on building capacity. The company that we want to build focuses on building workers. The company that we want to build focuses on making resources happen. It's all through the lens of a branded product. It's through the lens of the original SOAR protein shake, which allowed us to get an organic certification. It allowed us to build a facility down in Cottage Grove.
Yeah. I mean, what I've been most impressed about on your journey, one is I'm always impressed when, I always respect when people hear what I have to say and then ignore it. I actually like that sometimes. It shows I don't believe that what I or anyone else has to say is correct. It's just our opinion. So I actually think that takes a certain amount of bravery. I also feel like there's a... your story is very demonstrative of people will, people say things like fail quickly or, be willing to pivot quickly. And like a lot of time that's a bunch of jargon and you don't see folks really like engaging it. And you guys have really like embraced that commitment to just doing and seeing where it leads, like in a way that is sort of rare, I think, especially when you have a lot of attachment to the product and the story of the product. It's kind of like your baby, so it becomes harder to change. But you guys, you went full bore into vegan protein shake, learned some things, picked up some kind of assets along the way, and figured out, and it's taken you to where you are now in a way that's 2 years ago, maybe you and no one else, anyone else looking at it may have not been able to see the elegance that is sort of more notable in hindsight. That you can actually track. I think. I mean, I can just from the outside seeing like, oh right, and that happened and pinged them over this way, and they got this advice and it knocked them back over this way, and like, oh whoa, they just hit the bullseye.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about startups, when you look at like the theory, and that's why I feel so blessed to be doing what I'm doing, why I feel so confident going forth into the business community as an entrepreneur, because I have that background at the business school, where on one hand, the theory of startups is a startup is a business looking for a way to scale. Mm-hmm. You are a startup until you find a scalable business model. You can do literally anything until you get that scalable business model, and then just do that over and over again. And you're winding a path through the woods or the trough of sorrow. But then on the other hand, I have this great robust background in financial analysis, in how a business cluster functions. So what happens with SOAR is we get started trying to make a scalable concept. The concept is not working out. We get the opportunity to buy out another business, Real Life Food Oregon, formerly Tsunami Sushi, and we say, well, let's take it. Let's take that opportunity. We know what a merger and acquisition looks like. We know what a turnaround situation looks like. And we also know that it's mission critical. I'm getting a phone call. I'm always getting a phone call. We know that it's mission critical to just stay in the game and survive.
Yeah.
The longer the food business survives, the more likely we are of success.
Do you want to talk a little bit about so for folks that don't know, you stop me if I'm off track on any of this, but you had SOAR SOAR Performance running. You were working in a kitchen alongside Real Life Foods. The opportunity came up to purchase that company while they were both fairly early stage. You were able to capture that in a way that, I mean, what's interesting to me is that SOAR was able to buy a company that was fairly early stage, but gain a lot of the benefits that you would see through acquisitions that happen at like a larger scale. It was kind of like a micro example of the same exact benefits at play. So I think a lot of folks were kind of like, whoa, that's weird. They're like, those two small companies are merging, but like...
Those two small Asian guys are buying that company? What's going on here?
No, that's not what people were saying, but it was sort of like, kind of like, whoa, we'll see how that plays out. That seems interesting. And from what I understand, it was a brilliant acquisition for you guys. I mean, you got all the hallmarks of a quality acquisition deal out of it. I don't know if you want to. Do you want to talk a little bit about what Real Life Foods does?
Is it interesting? I'd love to.
Yeah.
Real Life Food Oregon makes high quality handcrafted food that nourish mind, body, and spirit. Just in that mission statement that was written by the previous owner, nourishing mind, body, and spirit through high quality handcrafted foods. We get to go to work. We get to go to work making a product that is so unique. We make collard green wraps and whole grain sushi, and it's ready to eat. It's something that's kind of rare. When you think of going to Safeway, and you go to the deli in Safeway, it's a meat case, and it's not gluten-free. And us and a handful of new competitors, to be honest, people that we never saw coming until we got the offer, would you like to buy me out? And we looked at the deal for about a month and a half, and my business partner, Drew Eck, I run the operational and financial background of the company, Drew runs sales and marketing. Drew says, why would we do this? And I said, Drew...
Right, we're a hazelnut protein drink.
Yeah, we're a hazelnut protein shake company. Is this a distraction? And I said, Drew, the reason we do this is because we can do this. We've got all the foundation set. You've got a sales and marketing program that's serving 3 stores. I've got an operational program that has hired 2 people. And we've got an organic certification. We've got a kitchen license. At heart, we're a food company. Let's just make food. This protein shake isn't working. Let's make this food. And then so in 3 months, we weren't distributing to 5 stores. We were distributing to 55 stores.
Right.
In 3 months, we didn't have 2 employees. We had 15.
Yeah.
And it was an insane amount of growth. The classic Joe Marushak is, I'd never do that again. But you learn so much. And we are able to survive at the end of that summer and say, okay, now going forth into 2019, we can be profitable.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to me from the outside that both the companies had very complementary assets, and now together I imagine for Drew doing sales, it's an attractive offer in combination when he's talking to a new buyer. They're getting kind of a twofer when they work with you guys. And yeah, I've been impressed with seeing that chug along. And then, of course, that's led to kind of the re-envision of the original SOAR protein drink. Why don't you talk about Hazel People and how that's... Because Real Life Foods is chugging along. It seems like it's doing its thing. Yeah. But, yeah, Hazel People's kind of the new big thing.
Hazel People is the new big thing. Very exciting. Last night we had a Hazel People meeting where we were talking about what is it that we do? What do we do with Hazel People? It's a new startup brand. It's not in the marketplace. People at Rain have heard about it. Mike Elkanen's heard about it. but not many people have heard of Hazel People. Not many people have heard of hazelnut milk. And that's what we do. So when we started SOAR, we knew we wanted to create, again, something that's local, sustainable, and organic. And we looked out and said, well, look at all these hazelnut trees. And we handmade hazelnut milk. Round about July, we had a new stakeholder come into the company and say, I see what you're doing with your protein shake. Chuck it in the garbage can. Let's make Hazel People hazelnut milk, and it's a $50 million business tomorrow. And we said, no, we're making protein shakes, damn it. We're going to do this because this is how we got started. We took a good look at the marketplace and realized we have all the pieces in play to make a product that is so readily scalable. So at today, we have a brand named Hazel People. What do the Hazel People stand for? It's, again, back to that food system development framework. Hazel People make the world's finest hazelnut milk to help encourage troubled youth to become the next generation of farmers. But again, at base, product company. We're using a old-time dairy technique. It's called extended shelf life milk. You could think of it as making milk, heating it up to a high enough temperature to kill microbial life, and then putting a cap on it so nothing can grow. What that means is that the customer can drink our milk for 90 days after it comes out of the plant. When you think of cow's milk, dairy milk, when you think of cow's milk, first think that this is terrible for the earth around the dairy. Let's just start there, and you can catch up with me on that later. But then let's talk about how it's exciting that we made all this technology to make dairy milk, and you can actually run many, many other products through that, including hazelnut milk.
Right.
Why is Hazel People going to be a successful hazelnut milk brand? It's because we're going to be the first to market making that refrigerated extended shelf life milk.
Well, it's interesting. So I've been fairly involved. I've gotten pretty interested in hazelnuts recently. You know that I've done some work with the Oregon Organic Hazelnut Cooperative. So have you. And I, just as a consumer, have always understood that hazelnuts are sort of an Oregon thing. But the more I dig into this subject, the more I'm sort of mesmerized by it. So, you know as well as I do that turns out more than 99% of all domestically grown hazelnuts are grown in Oregon.
Right here.
So literally every hazelnut tree in the country is here, except for a few random ones, I think, in somewhere in the Midwest. So it's about as Oregon as anything gets, and it's a growing category. I think production is slated to double in the next by 2000. I think it's 25.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing. I mean, it was 50,000 tons last year or something like that. And yeah, it's been interesting watching momentum build for that industry, especially around organics. I read another interesting figure the other day. This might be a new. I was talking to Drew about this, but so we grow 99% of hazelnuts in the country. Less than 1% of those currently are organic.
Yes.
Which is kind of shocking to me, given that the commitment to organics in this state. So I looked around and I was like, I wonder what percent of our blueberries in this state are organic. It's 20%.
What?
20% of that was the number I found. I have no idea. Someone from Organically Grown or Oregon Tilth can comment and let us know if we're wrong. But yeah, it said that 20% of blueberries planted in the state of Oregon are certified organic, which is not overly surprising to me because that's organic blueberry is about as on brand as you can be right now. But I found that very interesting.
Well, it's been developed.
Yeah.
You can see a production history of organic blueberries going back 20 years. You can see a production history of organic hazelnuts going back about 10 years.
Right.
And we work with that farmer that's been growing for 10 years.
Yeah.
And we can talk about why you would choose an organic hazelnut versus a conventional hazelnut. You can talk about the inherent sustainability of hazelnuts. But at base, we should just talk about hazelnut milk.
Yeah. No, I think that the hazelnut, it seems like there's room for just general interest in it to grow. All of that, to me, points to a sign that it's an underappreciated category, even by those of us in this state that sort of already know in the back of our heads that it's, you know, part of who we are.
And so why is Hazel People going to be successful as a brand? It's because we have the same headwinds that we're going, or we have the same, I don't know, what's the analogy?
I think the ones from tailwinds you want.
We've got the same tailwinds?
You want the ones blowing you forward.
We're going downhill.
Yeah.
We're going downhill. There's over 50 years of people planting, harvesting, and struggling to make hazelnuts happen. Thank you, hazelnut farmers. Over 900 family farms in Oregon grow the world's best hazelnuts. That's an actual fact. And the world's best hazelnuts are now putting a bunch of marketing dollars to push hazelnuts into the country of the United States. About 40% of Oregon hazelnuts get sold to China. And if you want to talk politics, the tariff situation has actually not been good for Oregon hazelnut growers. But that's a sidestep to the fact that Oregon hazelnuts has not developed a domestic market. And so if you go back 10, 15 years and look at California almonds and the success of almond breeze. Almond breeze and silk get a huge rise. Actually, it's almond breeze gets a huge rise off of California almonds pushing
those two brands sort of like bolstered each other.
Afterwards, Silk, which was a soy milk brand, said, well, we can do this, but we can also do almonds. And then now almonds is on a decline. Almonds is the category king of non-dairy milks. Coconut is on its way up. Cashew, oat is on its way up. And the hazelnut industry's wager is in 3 to 5 years we can make this the next mega trend for superfoods. Hazel People's wager is over the next 3 to 5 years we can make hazelnut milk its own predominant category in non-dairy milk.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing that come to life. We've got maybe 5 more minutes. So let's see, what would be my list of topics here? Oh, I know we have. Why don't we talk about the kitchen in Cottage Grove?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, talk about, wrap on that.
Yeah, kitchen in Cottage Grove. Kim Johnson. Are you familiar with Kim Johnson?
Oh,
Are you familiar with Kim Johnson?
Yeah.
Love Kim Johnson. Kim Johnson was going to get her PhD in neuroscience, decided not to do that. When you go back in Kim Johnson's history, she used to run all ages venues for crust punks. And it turns out that Kim Johnson is best as a food manufacturer. She sold us the Real Life Food Oregon business. But then she's also best as a developer. And Kim Johnson firmly believes in the idea of we are creating a food system, a food hub in the magical town of Cottage Grove. Cottage Grove used to be an agricultural community. It used to be a timber community. And now what I'd like to say is down at the Bohemia Food Hub, we're regenerating an agricultural community. We currently forward contract a collard green farmer that uses organic practices. Next to the kitchen, you've got the Coast Fork Farm Stand, which is like a throwback to Sundance, like early days Sundance. If you're familiar with Sundance Natural Foods, best natural food store ever located right in Eugene. We've got the nucleus of that down in Cottage Grove. And then in the building itself, the Bohemia Food Hub, we have SOAR Foods. We've got Hot Winter Hot Sauce. They grow their own chili peppers for a fermented hot sauce. We've got Lola's Fruit Shrubs. That's an organic fruit vinegar mixed drink. And then lastly, we've got Dirt Balls, which is the next big thing for snacks. So
that's cool.
We've got a lot of cool stuff going down at the Bohemia Food Hub, and we need to get some grant funding. We need to get some cooling in that building because it's going to be freaking hot.
We're working on that.
Yes.
Right? We'll figure that out.
Fast track.
Raise it to the top. Maybe there's some people that want to fund a food hub development project watching today. We can get you in touch with Joey, and he will happily take your call.
It's mission critical. If you believe in a sustainable food system, if you eat sustainable food, you need to understand that by and large, you are buying food that is being sold that's under the cost of production. Most of the time, the sustainable or organic food that you eat is being sold to you under the cost of production. I know it's already expensive, but you've got to believe you've got to throw dollars, funding dollars, consumer dollars at organic and plant-based sustainable food.
So I think maybe I'm actually, you talked to me about this. So you're kind of at that point. You said you 50 plus stores for both brands. So, you know, and 15 employees. You're sort of hitting that stage where you're kind of having to wear 2 hats. You're being an entrepreneur, forging off into the unknown, but then also sort of having to stop and look back and make sure everyone else is okay and manage like a machine that's in motion. So that's oftentimes sort of bipolar.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? How do you kind of keep it all sorted?
How do I keep it sorted? It's been the test of my life. It has been literally the test of my life to say, how do we have an organization that is measured based on traction and hype and survival, and transitioning to that into an organization that's evaluated on its performance and execution? How do you go from a company that is predominantly staffed by student volunteers to a company that's staffed by folks that have child support payments, by folks it's their first job out of high school, and you've got to train them and give them a great experience because they're going to go on to do great things elsewhere. And then lastly, how do you keep your financial stakeholders satisfied as you're trying to grow this startup organization? And it's unclear where the next, say, financial investor paycheck is going to come in, or when the next store paycheck is going to come in from product sales. So the way I'd answer that question is I'm learning. And I know there's a question on there is how do you stay sane? Don't. I'm insane.
Oh, we skipped that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're insane. Well, there's probably some Zen wisdom there that the best way to manage insanity is to acknowledge that you're insane. That's probably like the first step, right? Like,
yeah, they
like
do the same thing
it,
for
like
AA.
seeing it, right? Like I see you, crazy me, and taking it from there.
And again, back to the SOAR team. Thank you for supporting me and my vision. Thank you for sharing in that vision and believing every day. We're making an amazing company. It's really fun.
Maybe we'll end with what are your kind of general thoughts on where the food and beverage industry is going in the next decade? You know, and I'm sure there's lots of facets to it, but any like trends or changes in the market that you're kind of keeping your eyes on?
Cool. So credentials, MBA, and sustainability for business. That's where I kind of hang my hat. And on that, most of it is an attention to your certification program. Most of it is are you SQF certified? Is the National Science Foundation backing your product? For sustainability, it's largely organic, non-GMO project. So let's talk about certifications. And where I see is you're going to have a huge tension in the next 3 to 5 years over what kind of food we want to emphasize. In the same year that you have Patagonia's regenerative organic certification coming out, regenerative organic is a private initiative that's built on top of the National Organic Program that emphasizes organic practices that rebuild the soil, animal welfare that makes for a fair environment for our animal friends that we eat.
Right.
We eat these freaking animals, and they taste delicious, and they feed us, and we need to feed them. And then labor fairness, regenerative organic. On the complete other hand, you've got certified bioengineered.
I was going to ask you about that.
Certified bioengineered, which is the big food industry saying, let's own up to the fact that we are genetically editing our crops, that we're genetically modifying our foods, and let's put a label on it and bring that to the marketplace. If you look at the labels, if you look at the certifying standards underlying them, both of them are calling for a more food safe and quality and sustainable food system, but two radically different visions of where that goes.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how both of those play out, because I think you're right. They are at one level aiming at the same thing and at another firing in completely different directions. Interesting. All right, well, I think is that about our time? Okay, well, we did it. Good job.
Thanks, man.
Keep on rocking.
Appreciate the time.
So if they're interested in what you're doing, who should they be following?
You should go to www.soarfoods.com, SOHRfoods.com. You can hit me at joey@soarfoods.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and...
But budding entrepreneurs out there, too, you should hit him up and ask him to come do some mentoring, and then don't listen to anything he says, because that's the best thing to do, right?
Don't. Just do it. Phil Knight.
Hey, awesome. Good job.
Thanks.
Yeah.